Okay, hang on a second as I see if I'm back up. Okay, looks like I am back up. Sorry about that. What happened is in OBS I accidentally clicked off my camera feed instead of my opening intro screen, and that seems to have screwed up the camera feed for OBS. Okay, so I'm back. Excellent. Glad to see me. Glad to see you. How's everybody doing? Now that we've got that annoying little technical difficulty sorted out. Well, I've got a whole collection of interesting bullshit to look at, as usual. Let's see. Now, we've got Marxist Columbia University professor demands food and water for pro-Palestine protesters. That's from some bullshit called the Daily Beans. Kung Fu Master helps problem teen in school. What happens next is shocking. That is some of your Darman bullshit. We were looking at some Darman bullshit yesterday, and wow, that stuff sucks. I'd only ever seen people do like heavily clipped react, so I assumed these were like 5-minute videos, and somehow they filled 20 minutes with just crap. That's really something. Then we've got Nate Silver. Oh, I mean, this is perfect. Because I'd seen some bullshit from Nate Silver on Twitter last night, and I said, thing about Nate Silver is he walks around. His role in life is to just walk around perpetually baffled by everything, pausing only briefly to be wrong about stuff. So yeah. In that vein, Nate Silver is on the Tim Pool cast, fittingly, saying politics is basically young people trying to fit in. Israel protests, prove it! Which is weird because just recently he was saying, on Twitter, what he was saying is that clearly the genocide in Gaza is just an elite concern. That's why it's just the universities. And it's like, dude, your whole thing is that supposedly you're up on the polls, and the polls don't say that. But then he always gets that stuff wrong because his thing is sports gambling, and somehow he turned that into a career as somebody who we have to listen to on politics. Then we've got another Tim Pool bullshit festival. Frat boys raised $230,000 after saving American flag from anti-Israel mob. And civil unrest at UCLA as anti-Israel protesters brawl with counter-protesters. Things getting worse. And more Tim Pool bullshit. We've also got from the Zionist assholes over at JNS TV, pro-Hamas Jews are Jews for anti-Semitism. Well then what else have we got here? How the left turned on the Jews. That's gonna be bullshit too. From JTV, which I've never heard of, but it kept on showing up in my recommendations. He picked the Electoral College correctly once. Like, that is... So he picked, actually, the easiest, most superficial thing to do in terms of political polling. Namely, the horse race polls. Like, the one thing his skill set kind of transfers into. And that's it. We've also got the Israeli ambassador Michael Oren saying that Biden is involved in a blood libel against Israel. So we got all kinds of bullshit. What's everybody's pleasure? Want some more Darman crap? We've got Nate Silver on Pim Tool. We got some other Pim Tool crap. Some of the JNSTV assholes. We got. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Another one. This is from the Texan Zionist and Notre Dame truther, Carolyn Glick. Everybody should be a loud supporter of Israel, says actress Patricia Heaton. Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. What's everybody's pleasure? Some Darman, some Pim Tool, some Nate Silver and Pim Tool. Not Blood Pact, Blood Libel. He's literally sitting here claiming, apparently, that Joe Biden is anti-Israel. Hey, Riveroon. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious about that, just to figure out, like, what the fuck? If I remember correctly, we started to watch that towards the end of a stream a few weeks back, and it was something to do with the bombing of the various World Central Kitchen vehicles, and how could anyone, how could they suggest that was on purpose just because every single one was a perfect direct hit in 3 different vehicles, following them over a fairly long distance, waiting for the people who survived the first hit to get into the next vehicle and stuff. And of course the dickheads over at JNS TV terribly offended by this. But then, there's the Nate Silver on Campus Palestine organizing. That should be totally edifying. So, any other strong preferences in there? Adam, Riveroon, good to see you all. See, how long is the Blood Libel one? Oh wow, that's a longie. Okay, well. Let's see. I think the Nate Silver one is the Nate. Okay, we'll probably be able to do 2 of them. This Nate Silver bullshit is 15 minutes. We'll start out with the Nate Silver bullshit, then maybe do the Michael Oren, unless anyone else has some other ideas too. I've never actually seen Nate Silver's face. I've only seen his horrible bullshit takes on Twitter. Replace coffee with mushrooms. No thanks, I like coffee.
This is a post from Nate Silver. For most people, politics is about...
Like, I'm glad that the sports betting guy is going to tell us what politics is. Ooh, he uses the word epistemological. Holy shit. Nate Silver's going to lay some theory of knowledge on us. The sports betting guy. This'll be good.
Fitting in.
True.
And this breaks it down wonderfully. He has polling data on the topic.
Do his little lackeys here realize that when they go, oh yeah, true, they are totally telling on themselves that that's the only reason they've ended up where they are?
Issues. Out of 16 issues, what number do you think Israel-Palestine is? Any guesses?
75.
It's the bottom.
1 through 16.
16.
16.
15.
15, yeah.
Yeah, I think abortion is 16.
Whoa.
No, I could be wrong. I don't know. Let me check. Is it? Student debt. Sorry, no, I was
Student
wrong.
debt,
Yeah, women's reproductive rights actually a little bit higher on that one. But inflation among 18 to 29-year-olds, 64%. Isn't that crazy?
That's really actually a white pill, because young people being aware
A white pill?
what the government is doing to the value of the money that they're making.
Yeah, it's what the government is doing to the value of the money. It's not companies putting the fucking prices up. Yeah, while at the same time nobody does anything to actually shore up wages so that they go up at least commensurately. No, it's just entirely what the government does to the value of the money.
Is important, because the biggest problem that we have, I don't care what anyone says about Israel or whatever, the biggest problem we have is our unfunded liabilities, Medicare and Medicaid.
Well, first of all, Medicare and Medicaid are not unfunded. I mean, second of all, even if they were, the obvious thing to do is fund them. That can be done. That's like other things get funded somehow. Like war always gets funded. Which is actually the leading expenditure coming out of the general fund. I mean, in fact, maybe we could take some money out of war and just put it towards fucking Medicare and Medicaid. Or even better, just get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, get rid of the insurance companies, and just have a national health service. Like one that functions. One that's fully funded or shit. But yeah, 34% is actually still a fairly substantial... Okay, so 64% say inflation. 34%, which it's worth noting, is a greater percentage of the 18 to 29s than the than any sitting U.S. president has had a percentage of the electorate. Because, I mean, not any sitting president ever, but like in the past like 30, 40 years... It's been usually roughly between 20 and 30%. So Israel-Palestine easily... Oh, yeah, I mean, Bidenflation is where where the appeal of Joe Biden is mercilessly inflated by PR campaigns led to make us think that he is empathetic. I mean, as opposed to just being the normal kind of pathetic.
Those things will actually destroy the dollar. They will destroy the country. It doesn't matter what happens in Israel with Gaza and with Israel at all to us.
You're absolutely right.
If the dollar is
well, yeah,
destroyed.
okay, it doesn't matter to you. Some of us actually, you know, care when the U.S. government is doing a fucking genocide. I mean, obviously, and one thing to remember here about the Tim Pool cast is very anti-Semitic space. I mean, just, it's so anti-Semitic. When Kanye West was doing his anti-Semitism thing, when he was on that shit for whatever reason, I've heard people suggest that it was good reason to believe he was having some sort of breakdown, and I don't know enough about the man to know one way or another, so so I'm not going to opine on that. But, of course, where they went to spew that anti-Semitic shit was Tim Pool. So naturally he's pro-Israel, because all the big anti-Semites are pro-Israel.
And that is 100% a possibility if we don't have a responsible government actually with responsible monetary policy. We were able to spend and
I'm
print
guessing this guy's a gold bug.
money like we did when the economy was growing because of the growth. Without that growth, we can't keep printing money like we have been.
I'm sure what he's talking about here, above all, is all the money that's handed over to rich people, not the tiny amount of money that is occasionally kicked over to working class people.
And you see,
I'm sure
you
that's
see the
what he's talking
inflation,
about.
and you also see the interest rates are not actually controlling inflation like they want. It's really, really bad, and that's something that...
Yeah, because it's about profits. It's about the falling rate of profit. And if you want to really jack up profits, then you jack up the prices as far as you can on stuff that people can't do without.
Everyone needs to really pay way more attention to. That's a white pill, in my opinion.
I just love how no demographic cares about student debt at all. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, 26%. Men,
26%, again, I mean, that's more than voted for his boy Trump.
Four females, 27, white, 24, black, 31, Hispanic, 25, Democrat.
Yeah, notice nobody, and of course it's nobody when, actually it tends to skew more heavily towards black people than white people. For Tim Pool, that's nobody.
That's 29. Republicans, 22, independents, 26. Nobody cares.
No.
And
Well, it's not nobody cares. This is how many people think that this is the absolute top issue. And 64% actually leaves quite a lot of a space for a fairly significant minority as well. That's like, I mean, that's a third of the population, third of the respondents left to go. So that's not nobody cares. It's that there's a whole lot of fucked up shit going on, and it's hard to prioritize it. This is a forced choice question. You can't just say, I don't have a specific set of priorities. You literally have to. And notice that one of the things that comes up much higher, and I'm guessing this is not going to come into anything, is women's reproductive rights. I mean, like, all the sort of shit that Tim Pool doesn't want to talk about, like gun violence, like, healthcare, any of that shit. All of his major issues, like the, pretend free speech for Nazis, yeah, that's actually not doing much better. But
Biden just canceled more student debt for a bunch of art students or whatever. I don't see what the point is. But
well, yeah, that's because you're fucking rich. Of course you don't see what the fucking point is.
Inflation at 64%. Everybody cares about it. That is great news. But of course, Israel-Palestine is way down here at the bottom. And it looks like...
It's not at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the top. All of these things are things that a significant percentage of the respondents said were the most important issue. It's not at the bottom.
It looks like Democrats have the highest at 37%. That's it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, and that's how you know like online is not real life, because that's all you see. I mean, I am so...
Well, yeah, because this question isn't real life. This question is not how people think about these things. This question is how political propagandists need to think about things when they're trying to decide how to do propaganda for their candidates or their companies or whatever. So you say, okay, this is what people seem to think is most important, so we're going to make this about that. This is not the way most people do not have a little listicle in their head where they have, stratified every single issue that they care about by priority. That is not real life. This is just this is polling artifact.
So sick of talking about Israel, Palestinians.
Oh, well, that's good. Shut the fuck up about it. I don't think you have anything worthwhile to say on the subject.
So sick of it. And that's all you see. Yet, when you go talk to the average person on the street, they're not even aware that this is even that big of a conversation. They know
hear that?
Yeah, because actually the algorithm is cutting a lot of people out of the information, and there is a concerted effort in this country to downplay the extent of the genocide that's going on, because this country has to be, at the very least, acquiescing in it in order for that to happen. The supply line for that genocide runs through this country. So downplaying this and trying to make people think, oh, nothing really bad is going on, or make people forget about it altogether, that is, like, the key strategy here.
But it's why, I mean, it's the same thing with the universities.
Chat? It's not that big of a deal. You guys just can stop going on and on about Israel. No one cares.
But I think part of it is universities are also like the internet, right? One person starts talking about something and it starts to seem everywhere. That's, again, why these protests are jumping from campus to campus, as opposed to suddenly, no one is going into the streets of, Akron, Ohio and saying, you must
like, literally, Akron, Ohio is an interesting choice there because, literally, there have been major protests there. I mean, in fact... I've been watching all sorts of footage coming from City Hall there, from their city council sessions, Yeah, there's actually a lot of Palestine activism going on there because there's a fairly large Palestinian community there. And the reason this is jumping specifically from campus to campus is because they did this encampment in one university, and a fucking baroness, who was a former World Bank employee, so just clearly best person in the world right there, decided to break the university's own internal rules, adopted after 1968 when they sicked the National Guard on anti-Vietnam War protesters, to sick the NYPD on a peaceful encampment. And so all the universities around the world responded in solidarity with that. That's why it went from campus to campus, because it was responding to repression on campus.
I guess, like, they're only doing that at universities for a reason. And
Because universities turn out to invest a huge amount in the Zionist regime. There's a huge amount of money that universities are investing in their weapons programs, their systems of social control, and all sorts of things. It's actually a lot. Universities play a major role in that, not least because you've got those public service pension funds, those university pension funds and things like that. Those things are full of cash, and a lot of that stuff gets invested there.
And I think that Phil's totally right. They used to say, young people are Democrats, and then they get their first paycheck and see how many taxes come out, and they're like, wait a minute, now I don't want taxes, I'm a Republican. And I think the effect of that now, the more modern take, is inflation. If you're young and trying to establish a strong financial future, it feels...
Yeah, right. That's cute. Any financial future. Let's be honest here. A strong financial future. You got a fucking trust fund, do you? A strong financial future.
Impossible right now because everything costs more every single year. And even if you have a good job, the cost of living rises so dramatically that, if you're working your first job out of college.
And she's about to tell us. She calls herself the red-haired libertarian, despite her not having red hair. I don't know why she decided to call herself that. That is the thing she did. So what she's about to do, I'm going to just bet right now, since, there's a Nate Silver thing going on here. So, obviously betting. And I'm going to bet she's about to explain that why this is going to make people want to move towards the free market side of things, where, the fucking companies can put the prices up as high as they fucking want.
You're making, something that's like fair amount. It feels even less every single year, even if you get just
it doesn't feel even less. It is literally your purchasing power is going down while your wages are flatlining.
They can't even buy a car. Forget the house and all that. Like,
buy the car, insure the car. Car insurance went up by like 25%. Groceries are up constantly. You can't think about the future. And again, that's all that the Republicans in every state need to campaign on right now.
Yeah, like what? So increasing the minimum wage to a living wage, maybe indexing it to inflation so we don't run into this problem? So that's what she's going to say, right?
Immigration, inflation.
Immigration has nothing to do with this.
This is something
that's just they're doing a racism.
People are really resonating with because they are faced with the fallout of the Biden economy.
They're faced with the fallout of the capitalist economy. Like, the Republicans would not do anything differently here. The Republicans would simply not. Because this is all entirely the result of companies putting their prices up and keeping wages down. The Republicans are not going to change that equation. Things are not going to get cheaper with them. Wages are certainly not going to go up with them. It's like this is a consensus, like genocide in Gaza, like not having a functioning healthcare system. There is no one in the political class with any clout who wants to change any of that.
So Nate Silver says his theory is there's...
Yeah, plus the thing about taxes is... Actually, the ones that they're always trying to cut. When you actually... First of all, when you make a normal amount of money, the amount of tax that actually comes out of that is nowhere near the amount that is coming out in things like rent. Not to mention surplus value, but like fucking rent and the cost of living and stuff. And I say this as somebody who, because I'm in a casualized profession as a translator, And so we end up having to pay U.S. self-employment tax. And the great thing about self-employment tax is even when you have zero taxable income, you still owe it. So even when you're so broke, you literally do not have taxable income. They will still come around and say, no, but you got to pay your double FICA. I mean, but that has not made me less of a communist. Because why am I paying double FICA? Because it's more profitable for companies, for employers. Because the entire thing, the whole reason translators are casualized is that employers find it cheaper because then they don't have to pay taxes and fucking Social Security and national insurance contributions and all that shit.
Two main
Instead,
drivers
we get
of
to do
political
that for
beliefs:
them.
personal politics is self-interest, like rich people want lower taxes, and sexually active women want abortion rights. And then he says politics is personal identity. Whose team are you on? But other issues have primarily symbolic stakes. These serve as vehicles for
This isn't okay. So he's saying that the genocide in Gaza has symbolic stakes. You know, it's not that, you know, that there are like 2 million people at risk of being murdered. It's that there's the symbol of 2 million people at risk of being murdered. This is a guy whose entire thing, all he knows about is sports betting, remember.
individual and group expression, not so much identity politics, but politics as identity. People are trying to figure out where they fit in, who's on their side and who isn't, and this works in both directions. People can be attracted to...
What the fuck does that even mean? Like, because how do you know what the side is unless you already have some idea what your side is? You can't, I mean, this is climbing up its own asshole here. Because the idea is that you don't have a view on the subject, and then, despite not being on any particular side, you decide what side you're on based on who's on your side. And it's like, I don't think that really works that way. I mean, once in a while, I suppose you could say, yeah, I mean, everybody who seems to be on that side of the issue is an absolute roaring asshole. So maybe there's something wrong with that. Or, you know, every person I respect seems to be over here, so I guess I'll be over here on this, at least tentatively. But I don't think that is actually how it mostly works.
Group or negatively polarized by it. People have different reasons for arguing about politics and can derive value from a sense of social belonging and receiving reinforcement that the choices are honorable and righteous. And let me just pause you right there, Mr. Nate Silver. That is predominant among the left and less so among the right. That is honorable.
So, deriving value from a sense of social belonging and receiving reinforcement that their choices are honorable and righteous. He has to say that. He has to say that that's not something that right-wingers do. Because otherwise he's admitting that actually that is exactly what he's doing here.
And righteous. And let me just pause you right there, Mr.
Unless he's saying that actually right-wingers don't really give a fuck about how horrible they are. And I could actually see some validity to that, actually. That's my experience of them. A lot of them just don't give a shit.
Nate Silver. That is predominant among the left and less so among the right. The quote-unquote right, as they describe it, is...
Ooh, the quote-unquote right it is now.
I don't know, disparate libertarians who don't like Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who is going to be speaking at the LP National Convention, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, which is an interesting segue right there. It sounds like libertarians are, right libertarians are actually kind of cool with him.
About in a second, which is crazy. But a bunch of different factions. Christians, non-Christians. You've got like post-atheist now, where they're like, the woke is a new religion.
The post-atheist, that's what he means by that, I think, is these right-wing new atheists who realize that there's really no money in that grift anymore, and so they're all declaring themselves culturally Christian or some bullshit.
All of the, and you have post-liberal, and you have former Democrats, and even liberals.
This is such a bizarre way. He's trying to make this sound extremely diverse. But if he did this in terms of what they actually stand for, first of all, he'd have to admit what they stand for. And one of the things the Tim Poolcast is there for is for reactionaries to sort of hem and haw around what they actually stand for, and act like indignant when people criticize them for what they stand for, without ever really having any, while avoiding any kind of explicit commitment a lot of the time. But
The liberals are now all right wing. They're not on the same team. They're all on the those guys are crazy team. But the interesting thing about politics as personal identity as well is that also shows there's umbrellas to these different factions. Something we often would talk to Ian about because he wouldn't seem to understand what left and right meant. Left and right are umbrella
as opposed to Tim Pool, who clearly understands what left and right mean.
Terms for the different factions that exist within these spheres of influence. But on the right, people have no problem disagreeing with each other, debating each other, and getting along. On the left, it's
yeah, except that you don't really see a whole lot of... I mean, like, Tim Pool isn't a good example of this, of, like, disagreeing. Because when Christian Rufo comes out with a new thing that right-wingers are supposed to... right-wingers in the media, right-wingers with professional-grade microphones are supposed to pretend to be angry about, he's right there. He is early on. If it's, like, fucking critical race theory, suddenly he's always been against critical race theory. If Chris Rufo says, yeah, fuck that, we've got this thing where we're going to call queer people all groomers, then he's immediately on that page. Even when it means actually celebrating a mass shooting as he did, and then it was DEI, and so suddenly he's Mr. Anti-DEI. Oh, thank you. My hair, for the first time in my life, I should say, thank you, Rotten Mouse, and hello, is remarkably nice to me. All I have to do, my mother hates me for this, like, not really, but, I get it wet, and then I air dry it, and it curls up. It never used to do this, but it absolutely fucking rocks. I love it. I get like lots of little corkscrews just by air drying my hair.
homogenous. It is fall in line or we will cancel you. Just like at these protests where if you disagree with their insert cause of the day, you could not enter these spaces.
Wait, so the idea is that if you go to a protest for or against something, then that protest it would be normal for that protest to include people who are on the other side? Like, if you're not... the whole point of a protest is to be for or against something. It's actually kind of normal for there not to be anyone who is against the thing the protest is for, or vice versa. That's not the left hive mind or the woke mind virus or something. That's how fucking protests work. I mean, you go to one of these, like, white nationalist rallies or something like that, you're not gonna find a whole lot of decolonial anarcho-communists, for example. You know why, Tim? 'Cause they're against the thing that the protest is for. They think the thing the protest is for actually sucks shit. So they're not there. That's how protests work, Tim. You got the start on your grift from Occupy. Surely you should know this.
But ultimately, I think what we get at the Nate Silver thing is, obviously, this is what we see with Black Lives Matter and the pro-Palestine stuff. It doesn't matter what they're saying. They have the exact same tactics.
No, they don't. I mean, and also, I think you just got done saying that the difference with the left is you can't possibly disagree in any way with anybody at a protest. Unlike right-wing protests where it's just a free-for-all and everybody disagrees with each other and all that stuff, which, no. And now he's just gone and said it doesn't matter what you stand for at the protest? Or Black Lives Matter? No, I think that actually kind of matters. I think, actually, the reason that you are so reliably against these things, Timmy boy, is precisely that it does matter what they're for or against.
They create a protest for against Israel, and they create the People's Library.
Yes, a library named after murdered Palestinian poet and academic Rafat al-Arir, who is quite well known at this point, posthumously, and it's full of stuff about Palestine and decolonization and stuff. I mean, it's funny. Tim Pool, usually his thing is like they're banning all the books. Like he had that whole thing about the Chaz zone up in during the 2020 uprising, and he's talking about they're banning all the books and stuff. And now it's like fucking hell, they got a library.
And the
Like,
People's University. That's what they did during Occupy. It doesn't matter whether it's the rich, Black Lives Matter, or Israel. They all do the exact same thing.
What? They distribute literature? What is the exact same thing here? Like, they all have printed matter talking about the subject that they care about? Yeah, I think you'll find that is kind of the common thing. That is definitely proof that they're part of a woke Borg hive mind. Because, they have books and they distribute them.
It is basically Burning Man for these kids. And then you have that viral video.
Yeah, except Burning Man, Tim, does not involve getting the shite knocked out of you by cops and neo-Nazis. I mean, I've never been to Burning Man. I know people who've been. I've seen a lot about it. The one thing that I do not remember hearing about at Burning Man is fucking riot pigs descending on it and busting heads. And ending up everybody having to, spend the fucking night in jail.
Where you have that, the people are barricaded in Columbia in the Hamilton Hall. And then they're
Hind Hall, it's now called. After Hind, the 6-year-old Palestinian girl in Gaza, who had called out to emergency services there. The Palestinian emergency services contacted the occupation forces, asked for permission to go and rescue this girl whose family had been murdered right in front of her, who'd been sitting there for days. And when they got there, the Israeli military killed them all.
Barricading us in, and one woman goes, F you, it's finals, I want to go home. Yeah. They're basically playing cops and robbers.
No. I don't remember that part of Cops and Robbers, where you barricade yourself in as a part of an anti-genocide protest, so that you don't get the shite knocked out of you by a bunch of coked up riot pigs.
And they don't realize their real consequences.
Anyone else play Cops and Robbers like that?
Part of the radicalization process.
Yeah, but they'll get their charges dropped, or they'll be arrested, and then when it's time to
do you remember when there were the pipeline protest in North Dakota, and I think it's Shailene Woodley. She's an actress.
Yeah, she was in Divergent.
Yeah, I think so. I just remember this clip of her handing her phone to her assistant, being like, "Keep filming," while she got arrested, because it's like a badge of honor, right? Being like.
Well, yes, if you've got the kind of money that a well-known actor would have to afford legal representation, you probably are not expecting that is going to be a serious thing. Although a number of people ended up getting some serious charges and serious prison time, often just off of complete bullshit, off of defending indigenous land and water against this fucking pipeline.
I'm so in the know, and I'm up on the environmental causes and this, that, and the other. Some people go into protest knowing that potentially getting arrested is a risk. I don't know why the university students would not have thought of that, unless they feel.
Well, clearly they did think about that. That's why they're Well, first of all, one reason they wouldn't have thought of that, not redheaded libertarian person, is that the Columbia University's own rules says that the university senate has to sign off before NYPD or any outside, armed force is brought onto campus. And Baroness Shafiq just ignored that completely. So they would, considering the history of Columbia, specifically around 1968 and the National Guard and shit, They probably would have been fairly confident that the only cops they were going to deal with is their own, like, university cops. Which is not the same thing as fucking NYPD goon squads. So they would have been pretty confident about that. But, I mean, the fact that they're barricading themselves in, actually, does kind of sound like they were aware that they were at risk of getting arrested and beaten up and all the other shit, and they were trying to protect themselves. So what's your fucking point?
Like, college campus is a safe space and real life rules don't apply to them there.
I'll let you in on some.
Well, I mean, yes, like literally there is a rule at Columbia University about the University Senate having to sign off on things like what Mino Shafiq did.
Some advice. It's fairly obvious to anybody who watches internet video.
Hold on, what? Ferret? Oh, you rescued a ferret. I was like, wait a second, I don't have a ferret here. Bean. Hello, Bean the ferret.
Ask questions at a protest, they kick you out. When you go to these,
Oh, well, no, that's not you ask questions at a protest. That's when you show up at somebody else's protest to stir up shit for your fascist media, propaganda. Then they kick you out, Tim. That's not, you can't generalize from that. I've been to lots of protests. I've asked questions at them. People have asked me questions at protests. Nobody's kicked me out yet.
Pro Hamas protests. If you start
pro-Hamas protests, oh fuck off. Like, you could say that in Jordan. Because in Jordan, they are very explicitly, like, victory to the resistance, and we are Taif's men, and slogans like that are being chanted in Jordan. That's not these fucking protests.
start asking simple things like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? They're going to be like, okay, enough from you. And they're going to keep...
Yeah, it's called, you're the fucking press. You're far-right media. And yeah, people know that what you're going to do with that is specifically to smear them and incite violence against them, so they don't want you there. Like, a random person rocks up who does not have a fucking camera crew with them, and they say, hey, what's this about? They'll give you literature and stuff, and, you know, maybe offer you a snack, since they probably got food there.
I was at a protest in New York when Donald Trump had his, 7 dangerous countries ban. And they were all,
the Muslim ban, which he's avoiding calling it.
all protesting, like someone bullhorning saying Trump is banning Muslims when entering the country. And
Which
so
he
there
was.
this woman and this guy
And Biden's still doing that, incidentally.
that I had met, and I was like, why is she calling it a Muslim ban though? Like, honestly,
I wonder, Tim. Like, what do those 7 countries have in common, do you think, Tim? Being pronounced differently is spelt the Irish word ban, which means lady.
question, because I know that this band's like North Korean.
Sean Bean, the actor, his name in Irish means old lady.
Venezuela too, and they were just like, "What's your problem, dude?" And I was like, "What?" And they said, "What's your problem?" I was like,
Oh, well, yeah, because what the fuck are you doing there? Nobody expects that you are there to wish them well or to report honestly on them. He this is a thing he does. He, like, refers to the fact, he'll be like, oh, you just can't talk to these people. And it's like, I've seen him do this over the years. And it's like, when he, like, elaborates, it's always him rocking up with a camera crew, trying to, like, rope somebody, preferably somebody relatively naive who doesn't know who he is, into an interview, and then people recognize him and telling him to fuck off. And he generalizes from that, and he's like, oh, you can't talk to these people. No, dude. No. You can't talk to these people. Yeah, I see Tim Pool at a protest. I'm going to make sure Tim Pool fucks off.
I don't have a problem. I'm just wondering, is there something about it that's like specifically about Muslims? And they were like, whatever, and they just turned around. And
I wonder if the Muslim ban was something specifically about Muslims.
I was like, okay, like, it's a cult. Ask questions, they throw you out.
You weren't there to participate in the fucking protest, dude.
But it even like so.
You weren't in the protest to begin with.
Younger minds are more impressionable and they want to be social and they want to be liked in their peer groups and things like that. But you even see with adults. I know an adult male who
An adult male, any particular species? Just like an adult male manatee?
refuses to tell his mother and his coworkers that he voted for Trump every time, and he still tells people he's a Democrat, even though he's not, and watches this show, watches a ton of other shows, and he's like, but he's afraid to come out because he's like, it'll hurt my business, it'll hurt my relationship. So
yeah, it's funny that they'll acknowledge this sort of thing and then claim that they actually represent the majority opinion. It's like, yeah, if people even admit that they're watching your shit, they will become an outcast in everywhere, but you're the majority.
think about how younger and impressionable these kids are, and they want to fit in, and they're already weird because like these are the weird kids.
But
like, let's be fair, they're not the cool frat guys that are like getting sun-tanned by himself, like not caring about what's happening. These are the weird.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that she's just told us a lot about herself. So the cool guys, the really cool guys, are the fart boys who don't give a shit about anything. That's cool. Not giving a shit about anything. You know, like people are being murdered by the U.S. government through their Israeli proxy. People are getting the shit kicked out of them by cops just for opposing that. And the cool guy, the really cool guy is obviously the one who's sunning himself, having a fucking beer, and doesn't give a shit about any of it. That's obviously the cool guy.
Kids, so they already want to be included.
Well, and they're high anxiety, right? They're highly neurotic, and so they're looking for validation a lot of the time. I think part of the issue.
If you were looking for validation, it's really you'd have to be really bad at looking for validation to decide that the side that you want to join is the one that gets smeared by the entire media, the entire political class. I mean, if the idea is you're just looking to fit in and you're just looking to be like socially acceptable, then that seems like a really odd strategy right there.
Is that so a lot of younger voters don't really believe in the two-party system, right? And so they don't.
Yeah, it's not just a lot of no, it's not just a number of younger voters. I mean, polls going back like 20 odd years I've seen show that over 55% of the population would like to see opposition parties permitted to participate in elections. Like, not just symbolically, but actually be allowed to have a seat at the table and be in the debates and, you know, get airtime so people can actually know that they're running and all this sort of shit. You know, when you ask the question, you know, do you agree or disagree with the statement, do you the U.S. should have more than just these two options? It's like 55 to 60% I've seen in like multiple polls over the years say, yeah, obviously, because these people suck.
Necessarily want to identify as Democrat or as a Republican, but they do have their enclave issues, right? They're radical feminists, or they're, you know,
radical feminists, like Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi.
Whatever it is, they have
Joe
something
Biden.
that they were like, well, because I feel like this very strongly, I'm more likely to vote for this party. And I've done this myself too. I always think of myself as conservative, and you know, I vote Republican, but I don't necessarily think of myself as a Republican. And I think that mentality almost makes it harder for them because they don't want to be associated with the party exactly.
Yeah, except how does this actually work, though? Because the position we're seeing at these protests, and these campus protests are just the latest thing. I mean, there have been huge marches and, like, port shutdowns and all sorts of other stuff going back months on this. And this is not for a partisan issue, because literally the entire political class is on the other side of this one. This is not, I'm a Democrat, therefore I'm against the Gaza genocide, because the Democrats are doing the Gaza genocide. That does not, I mean, like, do they think that Biden, what, are they about to tell us that they think Biden is against the Gaza genocide? Do they actually, is that where they're going with this shit?
But they do also use the party's platform as a litmus test for their friendships, right? They don't want anyone. I remember this one girl, a girl I knew back in the day, super leftist, and she told me she would never shop at Walmart because that's where racists shop.
Yeah, wow, wow, totally, very super leftist position there. That's like, I'm guessing super leftist in this case means that maybe she once watched a Michael Moore documentary.
What? That doesn't make any sense at all. But it's this idea that, like, you know, people who you don't like act a certain way, and so you go out of your way to avoid even seeming like them, even though you don't even know if you want to be a part of the group that you could potentially be a part of.
Weren't there two girls that were just like interviewed and they were like, I don't actually know why I'm protesting. There was a clip of that just recently, right?
Very.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be heavily edited.
They don't know what they're doing. They just
It's Burning Man.
They just
say,
want to
hey,
have
look,
fun.
We're
This
gonna
seems
go.
cool.
We're gonna go hang out in the grass. We're gonna put up tents. There's gonna be food and drinks, and we're gonna read books.
And we're gonna get the shit kicked out of us by cops. And get kicked out of the university that we're going to be in debt for the rest of our lives for having gone to. Yeah, it's just Burning Man.
We're gonna do story time. And then we're going to bar Jews from coming on campus.
No. First of all, I mean, Tim Pool needs to shut the fuck up about anti-Semitism. This motherfucker is extremely anti-Semitic. He has brought literal neo-Nazis on. He never pushes back on any of that stuff. Bar Jews from campus. These fucking protests have had literal Passover Seders. Because they are full of Jews. They are so full of Jews that the New York Post was calling anti-Zionism a Jewish conspiracy just recently. Apparently Soros is behind it all. I mean, and this motherfucker's gonna talk about they're barring Jews? No, they're fucking not.
Because that's what they did at UCLA.
No, they didn't.
Because they wanted a Jew to agree with them, and the Jewish students wouldn't do it.
No, that's interesting. That is a very interesting variation on the fact. The point is, they did not. Okay, what he's talking about here is that there was a fascist mob that showed up at UCLA in full view of UCLA Chancellor Gene Block and the deputy gang members of the LA Sheriff's Department, carrying big-ass Israeli flags and chucking explosives, gas grenades, and bricks at the encampment. See, and so what he's saying is because people defended themselves against that, since nobody was helping them out, you know, the cops did absolutely nothing about it. Nobody intervened to stop this. He's saying that that's them saying Jews are not allowed on campus. Never mind that the protest is actually itself full of Jews.
And this is what ultimately leads to these clashes. So here's the thing. I'm at the point where I have a question about, you know, for you guys. So these
What's his question gonna be?
protests, most of the people there have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. Having experience at protests, I imagine
Citation needed.
if you walk up to the average person, they might even say, I'm not protesting. I was just here to check it out. And that's like maybe like 40 or 50% of the people there were just like, oh, my friends told me they were going to be down here. I'm not really for a protest or anything. I'm just here.
Yeah, wow. Well, so which is it, Tim? Are they kicking Jews off campus, or do they not stand for anything in particular? Like, and if they don't stand for anything in particular, it's kind of weird that they've decided to risk going to prison and getting beaten to death by the cops for literally nothing. I wonder if maybe that isn't strictly true, my dude.
They get caught up in those protests. But when people are saying these protests are anti-Semitic, I have to actually wonder, you know, the issue I suppose is If there are 10 people,
Okay, I can't wait. What is the issue going to be that anti-Semitic agitator Tim Pool finds these protests that he hates, and he just called anti-Semitic? I mean, he didn't use the word, but he smeared them as not allowing Jews on campus, which is fucking buck wild. What's his question gonna be? He's about to just ask a question. He's gonna just ask a question. He's got a legitimate concern. What's it gonna be, chat?
at UCLA who have decided they will not let Jewish students in this place. And no one else in the camp will stop them from barring Jewish students.
This literally did not happen.
Then you basically have a protest that just doesn't like Jews. It just keeps Jewish students out.
But okay. He actually stopped himself there. Because for a second there, let me back it up. Because what he said there a second ago, he was starting to say that actually it's Jews who disagree with the protest, who support the genocide, in other words, they weren't letting in, as opposed to the Jews, the many Jews, because in this age group in particular, a significant segment of the Jewish population is appalled at this thing and really has no time for Israel.
Guys, so these protests, most of the people there have no idea what's going on.
Oh, hang on. Gotta back up a little bit more.
Weren't there two girls that were just like,
Yeah.
right?
Very.
Oh, we're gonna go hang out in the grass.
They
It's
just
Burning
wanna-
Man.
they just
They say,
wanna
"Hey,
have
look,
fun.
We're
This
gonna
seems
go.
cool."
We're gonna go hang out in the.
They don't. I don't actually.
The part of go out of your at all. She told me she remember this one girl, this form as a study of something
Damn it,
that they enclave.
This was just
they-
a second ago, and now I'm not finding
They're
it.
looking for
Because he had started to
To be
stop
included
himself.
by himself, like, to be fair, and impression come out the show, watches the time, refuses. But it even like
Hey, like it's a cult. Ask questions. They throw you out.
but it even like so younger minds are more impressionable. They want to be social and they want to be liked in their peer groups and things like that. We even see with adults. I know an adult male who refuses to tell his mother and his Democrat. He's like, but he's afraid to come out because he's like, I'll hurt my business, I'll hurt my relationship. So think about how younger and impressionable these kids are, and they want to fit in, and they're already weird because like these are the weird kids. Like, let's be fair, they're not the cool frat guys that are like laying and getting suntanned by himself, like not caring about having. These are the weird kids, so they already want to be included.
well, they're high anxiety, right? They're highly neurotic, and so they're looking for validation all the time. I think part of the issue is that
No,
they don't
way
need
behind.
issues. Well, because I've done this myself too. I always think of myself as conservative, but I vote Republican, but I don't necessarily think of myself almost associated with the litmus test for their girl I knew back in the day shop. People who you don't like act a certain way, and so you go out of your way to avoid even seeming like them, even though you don't even know if you want to be a part of the group that you could potentially be a part of.
Were there two girls that were just like interviewed and they were like, I don't actually know why I'm protesting. There was a clip of that just recently, right?
Very,
Yeah, they don't know. They just
Burning Man.
they just have fun.
We're
This
gonna go.
seems cool.
We're gonna go hang out in the grass. We're gonna put up tents. There's gonna be food and drinks, and we're gonna read books. We're gonna do story time, and then we're gonna bar Jews from coming on campus because that's what they did at UCLA, because they wanted you to agree with them, and the Jewish students wouldn't do it. And this is what ultimately leads to these clashes. So here's the thing.
See what he admitted there. What he admitted there, as I was saying, is... See, I had misunderstood. I had misheard him. I thought he said they wanted Jews who agreed with them, which would be accurate. And instead, he claims that all the Jewish students, the Jewish students as a monolith, disagreed with the protest, and that's what that was. That with this fascist mob that rocked up and attacked them, that was just Jewish students who wanted to participate. And
I'm at the point where I have a question about, for you guys. So these protests, most people there have no idea what's going on. Having experienced a protest, I imagine if you walk up to the average person, they might even say, I'm not protesting, I was just here checking it out. And that's like maybe like 40 or 50% of people there. We're just...
See, and the thing is, if Tim Pool came up to me with a microphone and started asking questions, there's a non-zero chance that would be my answer, just so that he would not be able to do anything with it. I mean, I'd probably just say, fuck off, Tim Pool. No, and nobody's gonna fall for your bullshit. But yeah, I was just, I'm just passing through, or something like that would be another useful evasion to avoid giving him a soundbite.
Just like, oh, my friends told me they're going to be down here. I'm not really for a protest or anything. I'm just here. They get caught up in those protests. But when people are saying these protests are anti-Semitic, I have to actually wonder You know, the issue, I suppose, is if there are 10 people at UCLA who have decided they will not let Jewish students in this place, and no one else
He's just making this up, remember.
in the camp will stop them from barring Jewish students.
This is wild. I mean, and again, Tim Pool is anti-Semitic as hell. And he's decided to just come up with wow. He's just making this shit up.
Then you basically have a protest that just doesn't like Jews, just keeps Jewish students out. If a Jewish
It doesn't like Jews. You mean sort of like a lot of the people that you have on as regular guests on your fucking podcast?
student walks up, and this is on video, and he's wearing a Star of David, and he says, "I'm just trying to go to my class," and they won't let him in. And the other protesters...
it's on video, so you could show us, let's see, like wearing a Star of David. You mean just a little necklace, or do you mean possibly he's wearing a t-shirt that's the fucking Israeli flag?
are in there going, "We're not anti-Semitic, we're just critical of Israel." And it's like, well, you know, the people that you are supporting, that you are providing resources for, are blocking a Jewish student from coming in, and you do nothing about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Tim is a huge liar. I mean, and it's just, it is wild to see this motherfucker posturing as if he cares about Jews, as if he cares about anti-Semitism. I mean, it's like these motherfuckers in Congress who have been really beating the campus anti-Semitism drum, and all of them, like Tim Pool, celebrated the Charlottesville pogrom. You know, they love Nazis, and they're against anti-Semitism, supposedly. You know, hate Jews, love Israel, basically.
If you provide resources to someone who is intentionally targeting Jewish students, I'm
Which
just going
is
to go ahead
not
and call you all
happening.
anti-Semitic. I understand there's legitimate criticisms of Israel. That's fine. But if you've got people who are
Wow,
standing
that's
next to
big
you
of you, Tim.
expressing the intent to target Jewish students, and you're like, yeah, that's fine. We respect the diversity of tactics. I'm like, okay, well, then you're all anti-Semitic.
But they're
Like, it is just wild. He just makes this stuff up. I mean, that's impressive. I just can't believe. I just find it the level of just fucking chutzpah for Tim fucking Pool to now be posturing as caring about anti-Semitism. When he had Kanye West on there to say all that anti-Semitic shit, and he had Nick Fuentes, he's had art up by literal neo-Nazis. He has Elijah Schaefer on there, who's a neo-Nazi. I mean, he surrounds himself with the most anti-Semitic, like, most openly anti-Semitic far-right grifters on the internet. And he's gonna look all saintly and talk about how, ooh, yeah, anti-Semitism's a no-go for me, dude.
They're not just anti-Semitic. Like, I think the greater thing is that they're anti-Semitic, but they're anti-Christian too. There was a video that I had reposted where the guy's like, "This is Christians' fault." Like, okay, now we're blaming the Christians, right?
Oh, okay. I love how these people talk about videos they saw. They never show us the videos they saw. They just, they have their computers. They all have their fucking computers in front of them. They knew they were going to be talking about this. And they don't show us the videos. But I think I'm just going to take a wild guess here and say that what they're talking about is that Zionism was originally invented by anti-Semitic Protestants in Europe. That Christians invented Zionism, and Christians currently and at all other times have been the overwhelming majority of the Zionist movement. Like, there are more members in Christians United for Israel than there are Jews on the planet, and a lot of us, newsflash, don't think very highly of Zionism.
But we're not passing an anti-Christian bill. I just want to feel to point that out.
Yeah, but this isn't, like, it's not even about that. They're finding any cause that they can find to riot, to be destructive, because their real goal is destruction of this country.
Well, I mean, if that were true, that would be based, but I don't think so. I think maybe their real goal is the thing they said about wanting the universities to divest from Israeli apartheid. think that might be their goal, and, you know, on a more overarching level, stopping the fucking genocide and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if they were trying to like take down the U.S. imperialist regime, I don't think that they're gonna manage that with these protests specifically. But if that's the overarching goal, I mean, based, I guess.
I don't think they even really care that much about what's going on there. It's just an excuse to be able to cause mayhem, to break down the systems here.
I'm going to give you a good example. There was a...
This was not, like, literally the only reason there's mayhem is because these university administrators sick the riot pigs on them. If this had just been these protesters, or the fascists in the case of UCLA, if these protests had just gone the way they were going to go, they were just fucking encampments, just peaceful encampments, people being somewhat disruptive, but not on the level that it became when the riot pigs and the fascists showed up.
I believe it was a Patriot Prayer rally in the Pacific Northwest. And
oh, well, speaking of like things that are totally not anti-Semitic, here
a guy showed up doing Nazi salutes and saying racial slurs
at a Nazi rally. Wow, that's weird. That's who, I don't know why that would be.
And they threw him out immediately and screamed.
No, they fucking didn't. That's a lie. What he's talking about is actually Joey Gibson of Patriot Prayer regularly shared a platform with a guy who was known for doing Nazi salutes, and a whole bunch of neo-Nazis who were known as, you know, who were known to carry weapons with live ammunition to these rallies.
In his face, said, "Get out of here! You don't represent us." The
Bullshit.
media then lied and said, "Look at this guy who was at this rally."
This is bullshit too, because the media fell over themselves not to notice who Patriot Prayer was. The media absolutely fell over themselves. Like, they were, every time Joey Gibson would rock up to Portland, with his bunch of out-of-town neo-Nazis to bust heads, they would do violence. There would be they would do some attempted murders. They, try to stab somebody. They'd pull guns on people. They'd run people over with cars, or at least try to. And every time the media would say, well, Joey Gibson says he's a big fan of Martin Luther King Jr. and he's very big on nonviolence, but we don't know about these Antifa super soldiers. And this is the idea that the media, that students have very clear demands.
But the right had no problem saying, "No, you're out. We do not agree with you."
He's just making this shit up. I mean, this is, I love this. I actually low-key love this. Because, people like Elise Stefanik and all the other, anti-Semites for Israel in Congress know better than to set up this juxtaposition, because it does not help them. They're not going to talk about, they're not going to defend neo-Nazis at Charlottesville, say, in the same breath as they're trying to claim to care about anti-Semitism. But Tim Pool will do that, because Tim Pool is actually kind of bad at this and thinks that his audience are the biggest fucking rubes ever. Because they are, let's be honest. No, it's rubes and hate watchers. That's what he's got.
The left is like, "We're cool with it." And then I'm like, "Okay, well, look, man."
Well, the left
when there's
is
a
cool
video
with that thing you just made up.
It's like 6 people linking arms and blocking a Jewish student from coming in. There's
Yeah, that didn't happen.
another one where they have a barricade set up and there's like a couple students standing outside.
Why did they have a barricade set up, do you think, Tim? I wonder if something happened before that. Because they didn't start out with barricades.
And there's just like one guy standing there holding it, not letting him in. And there's not a single response, no rejection of the tactic.
What he's talking about is the tactic of holding the line against fascist groups that had come. They did not come to talk. they started fucking firing fireworks and bricks and, gas grenades and lacrimógena y todo esa wea. And they send that, and so, but the media did this very great job of using the crop tool on Photoshop to avoid showing the full picture that they took. Because if you show the full picture, it's obvious why there are barricades. Because these people were facing a full-on onslaught in full view of the cops who didn't do a fucking thing to stop them.
I'm just going to go ahead and assume they're all lying, and they literally just conflate any Jewish student with Israel.
Motherfucker, that's what you're doing. That's literally what you're doing. And like both the lying and the conflating, he's doing both of those things at once, in fact.
And they see it as one thing. That being said, I mean, the anti-Semitism bill saying you can't criticize the Israeli government comparing it to Nazis is anti-Semitic, is stupid.
No, it's not stupid.
Well, I mean, people like Tim Pool in Europe love the redefinition of anti-Semitism that's in that bill. Because, see, normally the traditional definition of anti-Semitism is racism against Jews. Specifically against Jews as Jews. Now, the trouble with that, from the point of view of a guy like Orban, for example, or the really anti-Semitic fucks who run Lithuania, or Germany, or the US, is that makes them anti-Semitic. So, the International Holocaust Reenactors Association came up with a new definition of anti-Semitism. And it does not make it about Jews really at all. It's very vague when it comes to anything to do with Jews. But it is laser focused on Israel. It makes it about Israel and not about Jews, to the extent that in Germany, on the strength of this fucking redefinition, they will have panel discussions on anti-Semitism. And when Jews say, wait a second, there's not a single person affected by anti-Semitism in your discussion. That's kind of problematic, don't you think? That every single person on there is just a white Christian German. And they say, no. Remember, we've redefined anti-Semitism, and these people definitely are victims of anti-Semitism. Because that's what anti-Semitism's about now. I mean, it's deeply fucked up. And Tim Pool should be happy, because his anti-Semitism is in the clear. Elise Stefanik's anti-Semitism, Marjorie Taylor Greene's anti-Semitism, Mike Johnson's anti-Semitism, all the anti-Semitism of all those motherfuckers is in the clear. Because they're all pro-Israel anti-Semites, like Tim.
Stupid, but it also feeds into what these people are saying. Like, oh, you can't criticize Israel. God forbid you criticize Israel. Oh, the only reason why they're going into these camps and taking them down, they didn't for Chaz or BLM.
Well, except, I mean, of course they did.
It's because it's Israel. See how much control Israel has on the U.S. government? And
except that's not what... See, that's what people like her like to make it about. This idea that a country that would fall apart within months if the U.S. cut them off has all this secret magical Jewish power and all this bullshit. That's what her lot like to make it about. That is not what I've heard anyone at these encampments saying, and I have like friends who are involved in kind of all, a lot of them. I'm not going to say all of them. There are lots of them now.
So this is exactly what feeds into that narrative. And Republicans can be out of touch all they want and think it's a messaging bill, and they're messaging to these, average
Nazis,
independent Jewish voters, or even like...
They're not messaging to Jewish voters with that shit. They're not messaging to Jewish voters by saying we've changed the definition of anti-Semitism so it does not protect you, but it does protect Israel. That is not who the real... that is not where the biggest Israel, centric voting bloc is not Jews. It is anti-Semitic, white supremacist Christians.
Jewish voters that are unhappy with the Biden administration and what's going on, but you're also feeding those narratives that the Jews control everything thing.
Thanks for watching this.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a point that, worst person made totally valid point. But yeah, every time they do something like this, every time, the anti-Semites for Israel do something like this, that does play into that narrative, and that is part of why it's anti-Semitic for them to do it, because it actually makes Jews less safe. Wow, okay. I wasn't quite sure, because I had not heard Tim Pool on anything to do with Gaza, where he was going to go with that, but I did not really quite expect that. But wow, I mean, he is so impressively foolish. I mean, he will. You can just say whatever bullshit comes to mind on the Tim Pool cast. We got 12 minutes to go. Maybe look a little bit at this Michael Oren thing. We won't get far, but we can look at a little.
And the coordinator of policy in the territories we call COGAT in this country will tell you that there's no humanitarian disaster in
Wow, if COGAT, the administration, the bureaucratic wing of the military occupation, says there's no humanitarian disaster, you can take that to the bank. Fun fact, COGAT actually blocked me on Twitter. I have no idea when this happened, I just randomly discovered it. But yeah, so I mean, his whole thing now is that the occupation will tell you everything's fine. I wonder, what Germany was telling the Red Cross about the Warsaw Ghetto. I wonder if they were saying that there was a humanitarian disaster there at the time.
in Gaza. There's no shortage of aid in Gaza. There's a problem with
That's a lie.
distribution, but that's not necessarily Israel.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, what's interesting, this is very clever. Because you can say there's no shortage of aid, because there's huge amounts of aid not being let into Gaza. Yeah, I mean, it is queued back miles at this point, and Israel won't let it in, and the U.S. will not require them to let it in. So, yeah, you can say there is a problem with distribution. The problem is, when anyone tries to distribute it, Israel and the U.S. bomb their asses.
issue in Washington, and this is like coming directly from Washington. They believe Gaza is on the verge of a major famine in the month.
No, I mean, Washington, if anything, has been downplaying that. The UN has been ringing the alarm bells. Palestinians in Gaza, like the fucking Palestinian medical profession, the ones who haven't been murdered yet, ring those particular alarm bells. Showing pictures of emaciated children dying in their fucking casualty wards.
Of May that would be declared by the UN unless steps are not taken immediately, and that Israel will bear responsibility for this.
Well, yes, because Israel, as occupying power, is responsible to provide aid, which Israel has never done. Israel does not. None of the humanitarian supplies that have ever come into Gaza are from Israel. Israel's only role in it is to restrict availability. It's the UN and private donors and third countries that are sending that in, and Israel then just decides what they're allowed to have.
It'll be a man-made human disaster, one of the few of the 21st century.
I mean, the other wild thing about this, of course, is that Yoav Gallant very openly said that they were going to be starving the Palestinians to death. I mean, that is not something he said secretly. That is an open policy statement. It was a big announcement he made on national TV.
And that was about as unequivocal a rendition as I can give you of what I heard in Washington.
Well, yeah, because even Washington knows this. Which, I mean, that's kind of remarkable that they're acknowledging that to that degree, actually. I mean, because you would think that they would be a little bit quieter about that, actually. Because they're responsible for that. They are not, they usually downplay genocides, population level humanitarian disasters that they are deliberately creating. But here, apparently, they're openly admitting that the famine they're creating is gonna cause, 2 million deaths. They are openly. So what we can say there, what Michael Oren has just told us, is that literally, I mean, what we could have guessed anyway, is that none of these motherfuckers didn't know. They're openly talking about it, at least, in these kinds of meetings.
Completely different than our reality. And yet,
Israel
it's
lives in an
difficult not
alternate
to
reality.
get deeply, deeply frustrated and disappointed. Right now, several hours ago, I read a report in the Israeli press that the State Department is examining various Israeli operations in Gaza to see whether Israel committed war crimes.
Which is just silly. Because yes, they committed war crimes. That's not even a hard question. That is not a hard question. Because every single one of their operations has been openly against the civilian population and against civilian objects. There is no question that they committed war crimes. Not to mention that war crimes only come into it if you have a legitimate right to wage war in the first place. And Israel doesn't. Because this is a population they're occupying. They have, so, the thing is, what he's talking about, what he's getting freaked out about here, is something the State Department does all the time. It is a standard State Department practice. They do this for all their client states, and what they do is they'll, go, whatever death squad regime they're arming, the State Department has to come up with these human rights reports. And these human rights reports always say, they're making all sorts of improvements. It's a wonderful place. And if you read any independent human rights, documentation, actually they just murdered 40,000 people last year or something. But the State Department will always paint this rosy-ass picture because it's a U.S. client state. And with that, it's kind of time to wrap up. So let me just thank everyone for joining. It's good to see you all. Hope you enjoyed the stream. I'm going to just drop that Discord link for anyone who hasn't already joined the Discord. Always look forward to seeing new people there. Where the hell's the chat window? Oh, well, hey, Chris. Unfortunate timing that you just joined the chat now because I'm just wrapping up, but it's good to see you. The thing about whether there's a war is it kind of depends on which angle you're looking at it from. There is definitely a war on the ground that is being waged by the resistance forces against the Israeli death squads. And they are doing it very effectively to the extent that Israel's been forced to withdraw most of their troops. They've been lying to their own people for months about their casualties. Their armored vehicles have been just utterly wrecked. So there is that. But on the other hand, there is what Israel's doing, and that's not a war, that is just death squad shit. They're bombing civilians by the thousands and sending these death squads into fucking schools and hospitals to massacre people. And that's not a fucking war. Israel is essentially saying what you have is the situation where the resistance is seeking out hostile contact, like you would expect an army to be doing in the situation they find themselves in. Like a legit army. And Israel is avoiding contact like the plague, just trying to find soft targets, unarmed civilians and shit. So it's like, there's a war and there's not a war. Yeah, I know you didn't mean to undermine that. I'm just saying it's complicated specifically because of this. It's like, I'm sitting here, been reading Anti-Düring, and so I have dialectics on the brain at the moment, and it is sort of a dialectic thing, in a way, because depending on which angle you look at it from, if you look at it from the angle of what the resistance are doing on the ground, then you can say there's a war going on. Anti-Empire Project, Justin Podur, actually calls his thing Gaza War Sitrep to acknowledge that. But if you look at it from the point of view of what Israel's doing, that's not a fucking war, that's just massacres. So it's it is one and it isn't one at the same time, and it makes it very complicated to talk about it in a way that encompasses the full nature of everything that's going on. Where are you joining us from? Is this your first time in chat? I don't feel like I've seen a single name Chris here before, but I'm glad to see you. Oh, well, yeah, there's totally a propaganda war. Oh, and just so you know, Chris, speaking of better luck making it the next time, 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, Friday and Saturday nights. That's when I'm on every time. And let me just drop that Discord for you in case you showed up. Oh, Devonshire, right? Yeah, you. Yes, I do remember you, of course. Yeah. Yes, I remember this. That was cool. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up, and I will be back next week, 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, which makes it, what is it, BST? 5 hours, so 4:30 a.m. 4:30 a.m. British summertime, or is it 5:30? No, yeah, 4:30 a.m. So yeah, if you're up late or up early. Yeah, like if you get in from the pub after last hours, and took 2 hours to get in and are just looking for something to watch while you're having a cup of tea before bed, I'm here. Yeah, it's an odd hour other than that. But, yeah, right. Yeah, of course I remember you. Have a good night.